Ever feel like you're just like lost in the game of life? Like you're playing, but you never really got the rule book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's what we're diving into today. We're unpacking this thing. It's called the Ludic Framework. It's from this PDF, ludicframework.pdf. And no, it's not about turning like your whole life into some big competition.
Right. Exactly.
Though that might be kind of fun, I don't know. But seriously, it's more about understanding the elements of games that, well, they kind of do exist in everyday life anyway, right? Like
That's
the
right.
rules, the choices we make, even that element of luck and how getting all of that can actually empower you.
It's true.
Okay, so I already know what you're thinking, right? Luder's pin.
Yeah.
Sounds a little, I don't know, out there.
A little bit. Yeah. It's from that Latin word, right? Ludus means
Yep.
game. So yeah.
So you're probably picturing board games, video games.
Right.
But trust me on this, okay? This deep dive is going to get really interesting.
I think, think of it this way. What if there was a way to approach your career, your relationships, any challenge you've got with like just a little more awareness, kind of seeing the mechanics underneath it all. That's what this framework is about, really.
Okay, so not turning life into a game, but using that way of thinking to actually navigate it better.
That's the idea.
I like the sound of that. So instead of feeling lost in all the chaos,
Yeah.
we can start to see, like, are there patterns here? Can I make smarter choices?
Yes, precisely. And that's where the game comes in. But we're not talking Monopoly here.
Right,
It's
yeah.
a metaphor. Any system where you've got rules, interactions, outcomes, that's your game, your career, for example.
Okay, I like that. So within that career game, what would be some of the rules, in that sense?
Ooh, that's a good question. You've got your obvious ones, right? Like industry regulations, company policies, that sort of thing. But then you've got the unspoken ones.
Oh, yeah.
Company culture, office politics, how to network without,
Right?
those are tricky. You learn those the hard way
Yeah.
sometimes through experience.
Yeah, it's like, walking through a minefield sometimes. You don't know where they are until
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So understanding those rules, the written ones, the unwritten ones,
Yes.
that's essential for anybody who wants to, get ahead in the game.
Yeah.
But then it's not just about knowing the rules. It's about the moves you make, right?
Exactly.
Your choices. That's where player choice and strategy come in, I'm guessing. Absolutely. You are the player. You have agency.
Yeah.
So let's say you want that promotion. You might choose to take a course,
Yeah.
network more strategically, or volunteer for a difficult project. Show them what you can do. These are all strategic choices.
Right. Like in chess.
Right.
Knowing how all the pieces move, that's one thing. But having a strategy, that's what separates.
You novice from the master.
Exactly, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The novice from the master. Okay, so you've got to have a strategy. But even with the best strategy in the world, sometimes,
Yeah,
life throws you a curveball.
absolutely.
Right. Which brings us to, I think, a huge part of this whole thing, luck.
Right.
So how does the Ludic framework deal with that? Because you can't plan for everything, can you?
Well, that's very true. It acknowledges that luck, both good and bad, is just part of the game. You might get that lucky break, that chance encounter that you just didn't see coming. Or, you might hit a rough patch, something totally out of left field.
Like a global pandemic.
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so you're not denying that those things happen. It's more like, okay, that's part of the game, but how do I don't know, how do I strategize around that?
Well, and that's the thing. You can't predict random events,
Right.
but you can control how prepared you are.
Oh, okay.
Think of it like this.
Yeah.
Let's say you're the kind of person who's always networking, always learning. When that chance encounter happens, you're ready. You're more likely to benefit from it.
So you're maximizing your chances of getting lucky, even if you can't control when it happens.
That's a good way to put it. And on the flip side, when something bad does happen, how can you minimize the damage?
Right. Yeah, because
That's part of the strategy too.
exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not just about hoping for the best. It's about being prepared, good and bad.
Exactly. Having those backup plans, those safety nets in place.
I like that. Okay, so we've got our rules. We've got player choice and strategy. We've got luck. And all of this comes together to create what? The outcomes.
Yes. The outcomes.
Yes.
And that's everything. It's the intended results and the unintended ones. It could be that promotion you're after, a new relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe you learned a tough lesson from a mistake. That's an outcome too.
Right, right. So it's not just about like the end goal. It's about everything you learn along the way.
Right. All feedback. Each outcome, good or bad, it tells you something.
Right.
Was your strategy working? Did you miss something about the rules? Did luck play a part? And then you use that to move forward.
It's like a constant loop, right? You're always adjusting.
Absolutely. always adapting.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this could apply to, like, every area of life.
Right. It's not just about your career.
Relationships, personal goals.
Everything has those elements, right? You think
Yeah.
about relationships, there's definitely unspoken rules,
Oh,
choices you make that affect the whole dynamic.
for sure. It's making me rethink a few things already. But, before we go too far down that road, I think we should address something.
Yeah.
Because some people might hear all this life is a game stuff and find it a little, I don't know, insensitive, maybe.
I can see that. It's
Mm.
understandable. And just to be clear, this framework isn't about like dismissing the real struggles people go through, loss, trauma, mental health. Those are serious and they need different approaches.
Right, right. So it's not about diminishing those experiences, but maybe it's a different lens to view challenges through.
Exactly. Think of it as like another tool. It's not the right tool for everything, but for some challenges, it can be really useful.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm sure some people might even say, this whole thing is a little too simplistic. Like, life is messy, it's unpredictable.
Right.
How can you boil it all down to rules and outcomes? It's not that simple.
Well, no model is perfect, right? The Ludic Framework, it has its limitations, for sure, but that doesn't mean it can't be helpful. Think of it like a map.
A map. Okay, I like where you're going with this. How's it like a map?
Well, a map doesn't show every little detail, right?
Right.
It's not going to tell you where every pothole is, every tree, but gives you that bigger picture,
Yeah.
the major roads, landmarks, the different routes you could take.
Okay, so the Ludic framework, it's like identifying those major roads and landmarks in our lives.
Yeah. Helps you see the bigger picture, understand the rules of the game you're in so you can make smarter choices. The complexities are still there, but they feel less, less overwhelming.
That's a great analogy. It's not about ignoring the messy stuff. It's about having a framework to make sense of it. Okay, one more thing before we wrap up, because I know some people might say this whole, life is a game thing could lead to, like, nihilism, like nothing really matters because it's just a game. What would you say to that? That's an interesting point. I get it. You could definitely go down that road if you're only focusing on the game part. But here's the key. The meaning, the purpose you find, that's not coming from the framework itself. That comes from you, from the goals you set, the values you have.
So it's not about denying that our choices matter, that there are consequences.
No, not at all. It's about recognizing that you get to decide what winning means to you. Don't ask, what's the point if it's all a game? Ask, what game do I want to play and what impact do I want to have?
That is a really good point. It's about taking control of your own story. Okay, I love that. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into the Ludic framework, I think the big takeaway here is you're not just along for the ride, right?
Right.
You're not a passive player. You have the power to make choices, to
Right.
adapt, even to, like you said, influence your own luck. And the more aware you are of those rules, the more strategic you become,
Yeah.
the more you start to, actually enjoy the game.
Yeah.
You might even surprise yourself with what you accomplish.
Absolutely. And on that note, listeners, that's a wrap on this deep dive into the Ludic framework. If you ever find yourself feeling stuck, remember, analyze the game, make those strategic choices, and don't underestimate the power of a little bit of luck. We'll see you in the next one.